So what we are going to look into today is a bit of advanced topics and the topics that I might have missed the last time that we are having this talk. So one of the topic is, I think I didn't touch more on it. It's about classes, that is object-oriented OOP in JavaScript. So classes, as we understand in programming, classes are a template for creating objects. They encapsulate our data with code. Oh yeah. So in ES5, we didn't have like the syntax for classes. I think we are using functions, and then we could extend with something like .prototypes. So yeah, but classes were introduced in, I think, ES6. That is the, yeah, and the ES next, which introduces the whole semantic of using the class keyword, which wasn't there before. So how to initialize a class? So let's say I'm going to give a good example of a class. Maybe we can say we have class animal. So class animal, and then inside it. So in this is just an object. So a class, this class animal will act as a template of an object. And then inside it, you can maybe give it different features and different type of it. So whatever we are doing here is called class declaration. So that's what we are declaring a class, where we use the class keyword, and then the name of the class is called animal. And then inside the class, you can maybe initialize, you can instantiate it using a constructor, which you can use this constructor keyword, and then pass in whatever maybe arguments that you want to be instantiated whenever, that you want to be called or whatever, or to be passed whenever you initiate the class. So what I'm talking about is, let's say, for example, if I wanted to say maybe the name of the animal, and what else? Maybe the age, something like that. So if I want to use this, I'll just, I wanted to retain it inside my class. I'll just do this, which is this keyword is used to access this whole, the class, the elements of the class, that is the properties of the class. So yeah, and then you can just say maybe .name is equals to name, so that whenever you instantiate your class, you can pass in the constructor and then the arguments that you want, and then something like that. So let's maybe finish up, and then that is age is equals to age. That is it. And then if you want to now instantiate the class or call the class after declaration, so what you'll do is, so just come down here and then say let, maybe let's say our animal will be dog. And then you can say, you can use the new keyword, which will now instantiate the class, and then you pass in the class name, that is the animal. And then inside the class, you see we have these parameters that we need to pass. They will be passed inside the constructor. So these will be the properties of the class once they are passed as parameters here. So maybe our animal name is dog, and then the age of the dog, maybe you can say 1 year or something like that. Yeah, you can just say 1. So that is it. This is how you instantiate, or yeah, this is how you declare a class. This is how you instantiate a class. You can just use the new keyword. So it's not a must you pass in the arguments. It's just if you want to save a few properties, or yeah, because as we have described, the class is just a template of an object. So whatever how you want to frame your object, that's what you'll pass it. You'll pass as arguments. Yeah. So that is literally the introduction on the classes. So the next thing is you can, inside class, you can also access these names. So let's say, for example, is I've passed dogs. I've passed the name dog. So if you wanted to get your, maybe, let's say, for example, if I wanted to know the name of the class, I can just do maybe console log. And then we can say dog dot name, which will give me the animal name. So if we go to our console log, okay, let me just zoom it in so that everyone can see. Hope you can see this text. We can see the name that we have just passed is called dog. Yeah. So I think that's a bit of brief introduction to classes. So the other things that you can add to class is, this is how you access a property inside the class. It's just similar with how you access it. In an object. So yeah, So the other things that you can add to your class are methods. So let's say, for example, I wanted to maybe say get name or something like that. That's my function. So this, okay, not my function, but my method. So a method is just like can be initialized. It's a kind of a function that is a property of a class. So yeah, where you can do anything that you want, or you can just return, let's say, for example, here, we can just return this, the name. So yeah, we can just do this dot name. And then if we call here, let's say we have instantiated our class with dot name, everything that is inside the class will be instantiated and will be put inside this dog, which will be an object or something. But yeah, it belongs to class animal. But we know, as we have said, we have described the class is a template of an object. Yeah. So when you instantiate it, it becomes an object. So you can just access this get name by doing get name and then calling it. So this is what we mean by methods. So if we come here and we say, if we refresh, you see, it's getting the dog. And let's say if we had to change this to age, we call this age, and then we'll see it will get the one. So yeah, those are the class methods. So that's how you declare the class methods, and yeah, and etc. So that is a few parts of the classes. So yeah, so these are just methods. This is how you declare methods inside a class. The other thing is we have also something that is called static methods of a class. So static methods, we use static keyword. So we can just give this back to name. So let's say, for example, if I had a static method and we call it get age. So in static methods, we use this static keyword to call it. And then another thing with static method, the difference between static and this one, and what is it called, and the normal method is static method can be called without even instantiating the class. That's like, let's say, for example, you can just do animal dot get age, and then it will just be called. So for example, if we just did, let me do an example. If we just did to a normal method, we do animal, and then you see it will throw an error that animal.getName is not a function. But if we do get age, it will just call it undefined because it's returning nothing. But let's just return maybe, let's return the age, this dot age. Use, let's reload this animal get age. Okay, let me see. Oh yeah, I think it. You can just return a static value, let's say 2 in it, and then you see to return 2. So another difference between a static method and the normal method is you can't use this keyword. So that's why it was failing you getting undefined, because you haven't instantiated the class yet. So you don't have the age. That's one thing. You remember, we're just calling the animal without instantiating it. So that's why it will get this as undefined, because this age is not being passed yet. But if we had to do the same to get name, you see it will throw an error. So yeah, those are static methods. Yeah, they can just be called without instantiating the class, like how we do this. Yeah, this way. So if we do this, I think it will still work. Dog.getAge, you see it's a static method, so you have to call it directly from the animal class. Yeah, so you have to do animal, something like that. Yeah, so that is it. Yeah, so also the other thing I've said, like the static, we can't use these inside it. Yeah, so the next thing I think, so the next thing that we can do is we can learn about inheritance of the classes. Classes can inherit from each other. So let's say, for example, if we have this class called, animal, and then we create another class called maybe dog, and then that is it. So let's say if this class dog has a few properties that belong, like all the properties of animal belong to the dog, and then you want to extend kinda. So what you'll do is you use the extend keyword that is provided by, I think, JavaScript. So yeah, and then you can extend animal. And then if, let's say, for example, if I wanted to, so one thing is constructor, and then let's say I want to pass name and age also to my dog. So if I want to pass these two to be under the animal, what we do, we have the keyword called super. Yeah, we have a keyword called super. So if we called the super keyword, it's kind of a constructor. It calls the constructor of the animal where it extends from. So you see, it has also the arguments that animal has. So you can just pass in the name and the age, and yeah, and you can use it. So you can just pass in name, age, yeah, and that and stuff like that. So let's say, for example, if I wanted to just use get name, I have my new method, maybe get dog name, and I want to just use this method inside the animal class. So what you can do is just return these. You can just use these dot get name and then do that. So if we try this, let's just do a good example of this. So let's say I will call my dog maybe Simba, and then we can now instantiate the dog class. So we can just do new dog, and then we pass in the name, maybe Simba, and then the age, you can just say 2. So if I do, you can just console log this so that we can see what each logs. So if I do Simba dot get dog name, what you'll get, I think it's the name of the dog. You get Simba. So yeah, and the other thing is, you see what we have done here is we have inherited all the methods that belong to this constructor, and then put them like inside the dog class. So that's how we can use, you see that this keyword can also access all the properties that are on animal keyword. And also you remember the name that we passed inside the constructor. We also instantiating it using the super class, I mean the super keyword. That's how it's being set to here on the name. So how this code is being run, first it comes here and then see the dog class, which is created, and then it is being extended to the animal. So the next thing it will go is just create the class animal, and then constructor, which has the name and everything, and it is expecting the name and the age and also all the other methods. So on our constructor, we'll pass in the name and then the age. That's when we are instantiating it. And then on super, which will call this constructor that has been already created on the animal, it will be passed with the name and the age. And then the next thing is, if we call this get dog name, since we have inherited all the properties of this animal class, so we can just use this keyword to get this dot get name, and then it will just come here and then return this dot name, which the name was set during our constructor. So yeah, that's how you can extend, and also you can just do in inheritance, and then you just say maybe we can just say maybe get name, and then this will be, you pass in a function, and then you call in a function, and then you can just do maybe a return of this dot name. So yeah, this is how we used to do, but you see it's a bit way long compared to now the new way of declaring the class of, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, so that's one way of doing it, and I mean this is the old way of doing it. And now on, when it comes to year 6, this is how you deal with the OOP, that is object-oriented programming, using the classes. Yeah. That's literally about the whole explanation on classes, unless there is a question before we move on. Any question? Harun, you can just check out any question for me and then throw it in. Okay. Well, I assume there are no questions, so we can move forward to the next topic. So the next topic that we can look into I think after we have looked into class, yeah, we can just look into error handling. We can just look into error handling in JavaScript using the try catch, yeah, syntax. So yeah, we can just look into this. So in JavaScript, how we do error handling, let's say, for example, you see when I was declaring maybe the objects or something, the error was being thrown on our console. So if I wanted to maybe catch the errors, what I can do is I'll just use this try catch, and then we just do this and then do that. So what we can do here, let's just simulate an error. Maybe, okay, we can just do a simple error here. Maybe we can just do throw, wait will throw, and then we can just throw a new error. This is just the error class. I think it exists in JavaScript. So yeah, where you can just throw an error whenever you want to, maybe to create an error or something like that. So yeah, maybe we can say this is an error. Yeah, if we look, we'll see an error has been thrown to our console. But let's say, for example, if I wanted to handle this error in such a way that it doesn't get thrown on the console. So what I'll do is I'll use this try, and then we'll just throw my error. Maybe let's say, for example, if true, we'll just throw this error, and then I'll just do catch, which is an error, and then so yeah, one thing about this is and then I can maybe, let's say, error handled. So yeah, this maybe here what I'm just doing is I'm just throwing an error. Maybe if true, it throws an error, and then the error will be handled. So you'll see our error is handled. That's how the try catch block works. Yeah. But if, let's say, so mostly I think this is just not the real world use case. So you can use this to make maybe API calls. Maybe if, let's say, you have a backend, or yeah, or you're doing some data and then a certain error was thrown, but you don't want to crash your application. Instead, you just want to catch it and throw it, or maybe give a meaningful error or something like that. So this is what you do when you want to handle the errors. Yeah. So I think that's how you can handle the errors. Yeah, mostly. But yeah. That's how you can work with the errors. If you wanted to do a certain, maybe you wanted to do error handling or something like that of the sort. Yeah. I don't know if there is maybe a question for that. I can just simulate a simple error. Let's do a good example of an error. Let's say, for example, I have a good JSON. So let's say I have this JSON. And then what I'll just do is I'll just pass in my JSON to get the object from the JSON data. Yeah. So if I had to console log the JSON, let's say JSON is console log, maybe JSON dot name, right? It will just log the, does it have name? Let me see. If our JSON has name, we can just log the whole, oh, it's user actually, not JSON. Yeah, because it's user and then dot JSON. So what will be logged is John. And then, but then, for example, if I add a bad JSON, so let's say something like, I'll just do that. And then maybe I'll just log also the age, right? Guy's age is 30, so we expect 30. Yeah. But if, let's say, for example, I give out an invalid JSON, maybe by removing one of the quotation marks, you get that my application will crash such that I won't receive. And one thing, after it has crashed, it won't run the other codes because it has crashed here. And so the other code will be just ignored. So if I wanted to undo this error, well, what I'll just do is I'll just do try and then catch, maybe do something like that. Okay, I'll just do this. Let's say let user, and then our user will be in here where the JSON is being cached. But if an error occurred, what will we do? Let's say this is what I will give out here. But if an error occurred, now I'll have to maybe give an empty object, maybe let's say name. Yeah, something like that, such that the name is being called. So you'll get undefined because our object is empty. So what is being called here? We see the error occurred here where the JSON pass happened because our JSON is invalid. And so what we'll run is the catch block. And then on the console log, since we don't have the user, they're just the names and the age is empty, it will return undefined. So that's how you undo the errors, such errors. Yeah, just to avoid your application from crashing. JavaScript initially, I think it started with, I think JavaScript generally allows you to run your, I think to work on asynchronous actions where you can just call actions and without maybe doing anything. I mean, they can run in asynchronous, that is in parallel manner, where maybe if I add one function here, let's say if I add a function here, and it will take a certain, maybe it will take 1 minute. And then another function here that will take, okay, let's say not minutes, maybe 1 second. And then we have another function that will take maybe 0.1 seconds. And then another function that will take maybe 2 seconds. So this one, I think will be executed like first, since it's the fastest, not executed first, but they'll be all be run in parallel manner using the asynchronous manner. So because this takes the shortest time, so it will be called first, and then we'll go to this one, and then this one lastly. So yeah, that's how I think JavaScript works. The other thing is we can just learn about callbacks. That is where you can start from in callbacks. This is where we can start from in JavaScript, synchronous programming. Yeah, so the callbacks. So one thing is, let's say, for example, if I wanted to maybe, maybe a good example is we can just do this. Let me create a callback and then show you the whole thing, how it works. So let's say, for example, if I had a function called, let's say I had a function called load script. And then I wanted to load something, maybe a certain script from somewhere else. So what our function will take, I'm just gonna make an example, is maybe the source of the script and also the callback after the. So callback, the script is just where the script is being loaded from. Maybe it will take a certain time, so it will take a bit longer. So if I want to load the script and then after the script has been loaded, I want to maybe perform a certain action. So just pass in the script and also the callback. Callback is just a function that you want to pass in inside the load script. So what we'll do is we just let maybe script. Maybe we can just declare it as a document. We can just create a document, an element, and then create element. I think we went through this last time. So yeah, where we can create an element script and then we just do script dot src is equals to src. So this is just similar to this, where we just doing a script and then we have created the script tags using the document.create element. I mean the script element, and then the src, we want to pass it. Maybe we have another file here. We can just call it loading .js, something like that. Maybe load script. So maybe this is our script that we want to load to our yeah. So that is it. So if we wanted to load it, what we'll do is we just do that, and then once you have loaded, I mean, once you have added the source, the next thing is you can call a function. I think script has a function called onload, as a method called onload on it. So yeah, so you see, it's a method that exists on the script element. Yeah, and then we just do this, and then we just call in here our callback, and then load the script. And then after we have loaded the script, maybe our callback will perform a certain maybe tasks on the script, and then we'll have to append the document, maybe document dot head. Our head, I think you know the head element, and then we'll just do dot append, and then we can just do script. So yeah, this is how the callbacks look like. But you remember, we need to call this, and we also need to pass in maybe the source of the script, and also yeah, and the callback also. So how we do this is, let's say, for example, if I want to, so what will happen here? I'll just load the whole, maybe I'll call our function load script, which is a callback function. And then we'll pass in the script maybe. The script is called, I think we called it load script .js. And then we pass in a function. Now this is the callback function. I will explain it in a minute. Let me just write it and then, yeah. And then now inside here, you can just say, maybe script has been.
Sorry, Bonvic, you can
Yes.
zoom.
Okay.
Zoom because of the people who are on YouTube.
Okay, that's better.
Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, let's say for example, okay, so what I was explaining about the callback function is, a callback function is, let's say we want to perform a certain action after you have loaded something. Let's say this script will take a certain time to load, but then after it has loaded, you want to perform this callback. Oh yeah, so you want to do something like that. So what you'll do is, maybe you'll pass in your callback function, you'll pass in maybe a certain parameters that you want to be passed, or you can just pass in the callback functions. It depends on what you're doing. And then the callback function will be executed once the script has been loaded. So that's one way of how to, I mean, that's how you handle the callbacks inside the function. So I'll just console log here on the load script, maybe loading the script. So yeah, we can just look at our, you see, that this is how it's being executed. So our script was being loaded, and then after it has been loaded, now we'll execute the callback function, where it will say, maybe it will describe the script has been loaded. So the same thing, you can just do it to, I think it has a bit of use cases. I mean, more use cases. Let's say if you wanted to wait for an API, maybe something like that. So you can just do an API here. You can just make the call to an API, and then after the call has been made, now you can just call in your callback, maybe to execute the data that has been returned from the API. So that's how you do, you go about the callback functions. So yeah. Yeah, that's a bit on the callback functions. So the other thing about the callback function is, let's say for example, I wanted to do error handling, or I wanted to, yeah, to cause an error or something like that. Maybe an error happened inside our callback. So how you can handle the error is, maybe you can say, what I'll just do is, I'll just say, if I'll just say true for now. Yeah. And then we can say, we can make a callback, a new callback, which will be handle. Okay. So yeah, what you can do is, you can handle the error by using the callback also. So if true, we just do callback, and then we can just say, we can just pass in maybe error occurred in our callback. So one thing about here, if you remember, we're just passing the script, so which the script will be loaded, and then something like that. But for now, since our errors are new, maybe this error occurred, So you can just pass in error, and then if we wanted to do anything, maybe we wanted to log the error that opened, you can just see error occurred and then blah blah blah. So yeah, that's how it's being loaded. Yeah. So I think that is it about the callbacks, maybe a bit of it. More info, you can just go to, I think, you can just go to how the callbacks are work. Maybe you can just go to the MDN website to look more into the callbacks, or you can just also view javascript.info /callbacks. I think you get more details on how to handle the callbacks and stuff like that. Yeah. So the next thing is we have talked about the callbacks. So the next thing we can talk about the promises themselves, that is the promise chains and stuff like that. Yeah. So promises, how to create a promise, and yeah. So I'm just going to give an example that is here. So imagine you're a top singer and the fan asks a day and night for your upcoming, like day and night for your upcoming song. So to get some relief, you promise them that maybe the song will come through or something like that. Maybe, yeah. Or maybe let's say you have a client who's waiting for, maybe, yeah, a good perspective is that maybe you have a client who is expecting your application to be developed by a certain, I mean, is asking when are you going to develop this application? When are you going to finish it? So you have to give a promise where you have to publish a promise or something like that. So that's when you're creating a promise. So if you, I mean, not a promise, but the application. So if you give the promise up when you're going on the dates that you're going to publish the applications, I mean, to create or develop the whole application to end, that is called a promise. So one thing is a promise might be, can end successfully or can maybe fail. So if a promise is achieved, let's say if you are able to develop the application to the end, so that promise, will call it maybe that promise will assume that it has been resolved in JavaScript terms, but maybe in layman's term, we call it like the promise has been achieved or something like that. So yeah, but if the promise wasn't attained, or if you are unable to maybe develop the application by a certain period, so the promise will have gone wrong or something like that. So that's where we say the promise in JavaScript, we call it promise as rejected. So the same analogy applies to JavaScript. So how you create a promise is you just say, maybe we can just say promise, and then you can just use the new keyword and then use the class promise, which is a constructor, and then inside it you can just pass in, you have to pass in a function to resolve. So you can just do function, and then it will have resolve or rejected. So yeah, and then since this is our function, we also have to add curly braces. So inside here, you can just do anything that you want. So let's say, for example, if the job, if the job or the application, the application that you're working on was finished, what you can just do is you will just call maybe resolve and then you can just say maybe done or something like that. But if you are unable to achieve whatever you are working on, so that means maybe something occurred, or you had a problem, or you have a blocker, so you'll have to return an error, or you have to reject the promise since you are unable to achieve the promise. So maybe we say error occurred or something like that. So that's how a promise is resolved. So a promise has 3 states. That is we have the resolved state, we have the rejected state, and also the other one is called pending state. So the pending state is that period between when you're doing, let's say, in layman's in whatever the language, the example that we are using, let's say the period between when you're developing that application to go live or something like that. So that is the pending state before the promises, maybe the promise deadline is achieved. So that's the pending state in between there. So yeah, once the promise is done, we'll go to resolve, which is also known as fulfilled state. And then this state is where maybe an error occurred or something happened. So we can call it maybe error or reject state. So yeah, those are rejected state. Yeah, those are the the 3 states that we have on promises. So let's just create a simple promise. So we're just going to do maybe a promise, maybe we can just promise maybe after 1 second, or after maybe 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, we can alert the user that the job is done. We can alert the user the job is done. So what we can use here is just we can use the set timeout. And then this is a function where in JavaScript where you can maybe create a delay or something like that if you wanted to do that. So maybe we can just do resolve, and then inside here we can call it done, and then do something like that. So what we are doing here is let's say if this after maybe the 2 seconds, this is 1 second actually, so 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, we can just resolve this as done. So if I was to execute this, we can just do let's do promise. Maybe we can, let's first console log this and then see what it returns. Promise, and then yeah. So if we look into that, you see promise is in pending state, and then yeah, so that is the first state. I think if we want to get a fulfilled state of it, so what you can do is we have the chaining of promises, which is called, maybe the consumer of the promise, which we can use a method called .then, which will consume whatever that is being returned on the promise. So we can just do on fulfill. It will take in a callback, and then Yeah, or we can just return console log and see what happens. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, we are missing that. So promise.pending, you see it called done later after 2 seconds. So let's just reload this and then we see the behavior. You see it's called done. So this is the pending state. After the pending state is that is maybe fulfilled, we call the done state. So yeah, we use .then to access the done state. Yeah. Okay, this is just a short form. If let's say it's just similar to this, where we can just say result, and then similar to this, yeah, res. So that was just a shorthand for calling the whole of this line. Yeah, that's what I was using. Promise and then done. Yeah. So that's one way to, yeah, to do it. So let's say, for example, you remember on the callback, we had something that, let's say, for example, if I had a promise, I will have to load the script, and then later when the script is done, I do something. Maybe I was just appending the script to the body. So here, what we use is not, we don't use .then, we just use finally. That's when after your whole maybe promise has been executed. So you can just use .finally, where you can pass in a callback function, and then you can just say console log, and then say this was executed. So yeah, if we look into that, you see it calls done first, and then we just confirm like the whole thing, the whole promise was executed. So that's the first thing. So the next thing we can talk about is, what if this promise was rejected? How do we handle that? So we can just do a simple, you see, okay, we can just do a reject without even adding anything to our promise. So if we just do use the rejected, what will happen? You see, it will just throw an error. Yeah, it will just throw an error. I can just rename this to error occurred. Yeah. It will just throw, if we reload that after 2 seconds, it will just reload the error. It will just throw the error since our promise was rejected or something went wrong with our promise. So instead of crashing our application using this error, how can we handle the error? So using the promises, how you can handle the error is using .catch. So .catch, and then you pass in the error that happened, and then actually you pass in what is it called, a callback function with the error that occurred inside it, yeah, as a parameter. And then so if we just log the error that occurred here, error, if we just look into that, we'll see something, maybe the error occurred. We have handled it without throwing an error, and you see the finally is being called now, unlike before, nothing was being called. So yeah, that's, I think, how to handle the promises, the error, the rejected state. I think we have, just to recap, we have talked about the promises. This is how you create a promise if you wanted to create one. Yeah. And then it has 3 states, that is fulfilled, rejected, and pending. Yeah, and if you want to maybe reject and create an error, maybe you can just do rejected. If you wanted to resolve the value so that your promise will be successful, you can just do resolve and something like that. So a good use case for this is, let's say if you are doing maybe a fetch or just doing a fetch. So what you just do, maybe you pass in the API or something like that. And then inside fetch, this will maybe call API. So if we do just a .10, inside here, the results will be captured with using .10. And then you can use your, whatever the results that you're using or you're calling from your API. And the next thing, you can just use the .catch just in case maybe you got an error, maybe your request was rejected or something like that. So yeah, those are a few examples on how to, I mean, a few use cases on how to use the promises. Yeah, the final part on promises that I'm just going to talk about, and then we can just move forward to another thing, is called async await. This one wasn't there on ES5. I think it came about on ES6. So it's a bit new feature. Yeah. So async function, unlike maybe we can just go back to our code that is on this one. This is how our promise looks like. And this is how you just have to write a lot of code so that you can have to wait the whole of these to be executed and something like that. So instead of that, we have a new syntax called async await in JavaScript, where you can just, let's say, for example, if I've declared a function, this is my function called async, let's say maybe function. So in async await, you have to use this keyword async in front of every function that you want to maybe call a promise or something like that. So yeah, if I wanted to just do this, and then I'll just do what? Let's see. So the next thing is maybe I'll just give a name, maybe test async. We can call it our function that way. So in every function that you're creating, you'll have to add async before the function keyword. Or if you are using arrow functions, you can just do maybe const, maybe async tests, let's just call it. And then you just do async, and then your parentheses, and then this, and then yeah. So that's how you create an async on the arrow function. So yeah, we can just use the function. So if, let's say, for example, I wanted to call this promise, what I'll do is, I know it will return something or it will resolve to something. So I'll just do maybe test, and then I'll say await this promise, maybe it's promise. Yeah, await promise. And then is it a function? Or it's just, yeah. I'll just say await this promise, and then I can just do console.log test. I think so. So we can just comment out this so that you can see the results. And then I'll call my function down here, test async await. So you see, it caused the error card. Let's just handle that. Oh, yeah. I think it's returning this instead of done. Yeah, since we are resolving, I think what will happen to this function when it is called, you'll have to, it will pass here and then see this function. It's being awaited. And then after the promise is done, it has been resolved, it will call this function. I mean our console log. And then you see it will be, it prints the done. So one thing about async await, it's a bit easier. As you can see, the syntax is a bit easier compared to the promises where you just have to chain and then call a bit of, you pass in callbacks in .then, so that you have to, to access something, you have to pass in callbacks. In async, you just pass in the await and then blah, blah, blah. So that's the good thing about it. Like, it's easy and simple and straightforward to use. But the downside of async await is it has a blocking effect. Unlike promise, this using the .then promise, you can just call it and then you can also do a few stuff below it. In async await, once your code has gotten to this, it has to wait for this promise to be resolved so that it can move to the next code base. What I mean is, let me just give a good example. Is, let's say this promise, we have this promise here, and then I have also a console log down here. Yeah, so we can just call it maybe called. Yeah, that's how we can maybe name it, or we can just call it. So if we look on how it was called is being called first, and then done, and then executed. So it has then unblocking effect where you can just have a few stuff running. So this can be a good thing and a bad thing. So it depends on your use case. Yeah, but generally, I think they have different use cases. Let's say if we wanted to run functions in different, maybe parallel to each other, you can just use these. But if you wanted to maybe wait for something to be executed first before you go to the next statement, you can just use async await, which will have the blocking effect, and then you should just block this and then finish up and then go to the next statement. Yeah, that's a bit about the promises. I think I've captured most of the stuff. Okay, and the other thing about async await, so you remember on .then we are using the catch and yeah, and something like that. So here we will have to use the try catch block. I think you remember during error handling. So if we do this, we can just do this and then okay, I can just show an effect where we don't have a catch block and then we have maybe rejected this error. I mean our promise. Maybe an error occurred and then it was kind of rejected. So what will happen is, if you look at this, an error occurs. Yeah, so you see an error occurs on that. Maybe we can comment this out and then try again. Yeah, and after 2 seconds, an error occurs. So if we wanted to undo the error using async await, we'll have to introduce the try catch blocks, where you put your whole code where you're calling async await. I mean the await block statement inside the try catch, and then just in case if any error occurred, so you'll just handle it. Maybe say error here, then call it passing the error message that came from there. You see error done. Yeah, I think some spelling mistake. Yeah, so this is how you handle the errors in the async await and something like that. Yeah, that's generally it. If you wanted to do maybe to create a to do, I mean to do what, to handle the promises. So these are the three different ways that you can handle the promises.